Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. I am your host, Jim Kelgard. That's right, Jim, with two M's. Why? I don't know. My mama dropped me a couple of times. That probably explains more than a few things about me. But anyhow, thanks for joining us for our latest podcast here, where we're going to be recapping what's been going on thus far with season 6 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, the hit docuseries on the History Channel. And joining me, as always, is my super awesome, super intelligent, and uber cool co-host and co-creator of The Soul of the Unexplained, Mr. Roger Stokes. Roger, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Good to see everybody again, and super excited to be here, especially because we are getting close, just a couple months away to Phenomicon, where we have a lot of friends and fans and family, and we're just super excited. But we're going to save that for another podcast. We're going to be talking some real cool stuff about Skinwalker Ranch today, but excited to be here. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching this from, whatever time of day, we welcome you here.
Right on. And you know, Roger, it's fortuitous that you mentioned Phenomicon because exactly 2 months from today, 60 days from today, which today being the 6th of July, there's something special going to be happening at Phenomicon, and that would be the live performance of the band Hitchhiker. And we just so happen to have a member of Hitchhiker here joining us today, Roger. And I'm not talking about me, not talking about that crazy weird keyboard player that likes tacos. I'm talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. John Nyberger. How are you doing, buddy?
Good afternoon. The bass player who
The
loves
bass player.
coffee and guacamole, though. Doing
Uh,
great. Happy to be here. It's good to see you guys.
Always, 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 always good to see you. And another thing you and I were just talking about before we started recording, John, is the NFL season for 2025 is we're it's July. We're going to be having some people are going to start reporting to training camp, and like we were saying, I think the Hall of Fame game, which is the official kickoff of the NFL's preseason, is going to be happening in less than 30 days, right?
Yep. End of the month.
That's right.
Wild. It's gonna be
Go
a good
Bron
year.
Go Broncos.
Right. Hey,
Go
Raiders might they're gonna
Go
do pretty well this
Raiders.
year too. Hopefully not as well as the Broncos, but
Oh,
we'll
well,
see.
there's some history there, isn't there?
A little bit.
Just a little bit. And folks, before we get started, I have to give a shout out to my very dear friend, Mr. Jeff Freeman, and also to Linda Simpson and Jan and all the great folks over for the J Free 906 podcast. And had to show that I do still use the wonderful mug that they gave me a short while ago. And guys, and anybody that's friends with me on Facebook, follows me on social media, knows that I have something that I'm just like really a big connoisseur of, and that of course is soda. I mean, here in Utah, liquor's kind of hard to get a hold of. Well, that's not really true, but I gave up drinking a long time ago. But I love Mountain Dew and I love soda. And right today, I happen to be drinking this limited edition Mountain Dew. It's dragon fruit flavor. And sadly, for you, Roger, I don't think there is a zero sugar version of the dragon fruit flavor of Mountain Dew, but I've got some,
Unfortunate.
yeah, I've got some here in my trusty mug, and I put some freshly squeezed lime juice in it. And I got to tell you guys, this is one heck of a fun summer drink. So that's if I seem to have a little extra energy and pep in my step, that's why. So, anyhow, gentlemen, let's go ahead and dive right into this rabbit hole that we love going down called Skinwalker Ranch, this 512-acre property that's located in northeastern Utah. And it's there's no place like it on earth that at least that I'm aware of. There's obviously,
Jim,
yeah,
you you gotta do it just like the show. There is a ranch in
there is
north.
a ranch in northern Utah. It is the epicenter of
The strangest phenomenon.
weird and strange shit that happens all the time.
Sorry, I just yeah. When you were
And
talking about that, I'm like, that is the intro there of Skinwalker Ranch.
and have you guys noticed that they actually changed the wording of the intro this year?
Yes, they did.
It's like I don't know what it is, but the really astute viewers out there and people that watch the docuseries, pay attention the next time that that opening thing comes on where the narrator starts talking. They've changed it up. Like from the very first season through season 5, it was the same exact narration in the opening segment, but now it's changed up a little bit, and I wonder if
Interesting.
that's I wonder if that's a shadow of things to come,
I always
perhaps.
skip it, so I would never notice.
Right?
I usually record it and then immediately skip past the first part right to the good stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
We
And
might be missing some clues.
you very well could be. Yes, absolutely. So, folks, there's a couple of differences, things that are new this season, and so we'll knock the big one out of the park, and we'll talk about it right now for those that aren't too familiar. There is a familiar face on the Skinwalker Ranch team who sadly is not joining us for this current season, season 6, and that happens to be Bryant Dragon Arnold, the head of security at Skinwalker Ranch. And sadly, Bryant cannot be with the cast and crew of the show this year because he is taking care of his son, who has been ill for quite some time. So he's had to take a step back for this season, and there's been some great flashback moments where we've caught Bryant in the episodes, but as far as in the new episodes that are airing, sadly, our good buddy Dragon has not been there, but I'll tell you what, folks, he's still very, very actively involved in the ranch, so no worries there. In fact, if you happen to be a Skinwalker Ranch insider, as both Roger and John are, and myself as well, then Dragon is the one who hosts the weekly question and answer sessions for the cast and the team members of the docu series. So Dragon is still very much a part of the ranch. It's just that sadly he's had to take a step back to look after his son, who hasn't been doing too well lately. So our thoughts and our good vibes and prayers go out to Dragon and his family, and we certainly miss seeing his wonderful presence on camera. But we know that he's still there, and our hearts are still with him, and always will be. So, guys, that's kind of like the first obvious big change for this year. But there's been some other new things that we've seen on the ranch, new technology that we're seeing that is being deployed on the ranch, as well as some new vendors that have been coming on. But where I want to start the discussion is last year, if you recall, kind of like the big oh crap moment from last year, uh, was the discovery of this thing that they called the cone, right? The cone zone, uh, right out there in the triangle, and it basically encompassed this, big swath of land, basically covering from Homestead 2 clear over to the eastern boundary of the ranch. And so that was one of those moments where I literally jumped off the couch and was like, my jaw dropped to the floor. And so we saw some really cool stuff regarding this cone last year. And it's where we saw some of the strange things happen with the laser experiments, where lasers were shooting straight up and all of a sudden the beam would just stop uh, inexplicably, and then sometimes would reappear a little ways further in the sky. So really strange phenomena that happened last year. But this year, instead of calling it the cone, they're calling it the bubble. So, guys, what are your thoughts on that? And John, we'll start with you.
I call it the dome. I think it's a dome until we know it's a bubble. I think it's a dome, but I don't know. I'm completely dumbfounded what that even means. Like we can speculate all day. It is just dumbfounding to me. Like with the lidar. The lidar is just sending out lasers, and getting a reflection, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's in the middle of the air? that lasers could be reflecting off of. What sort of a boundary is it? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's almost like there's uh, two different substances. There's an index of refraction between two different, like between water and air and stuff like. It's almost like that. Like there's some
Right.
sort of boundary there, and under the right conditions, you can get a reflection off of the boundary instead of something leaving. And maybe
Right.
the lidar is just the right wavelength, and you get some reflection. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Even less What makes even less sense is getting reflections from the ground that make it look like it's a bubble.
Right.
Because that literally makes no sense because lidar can't penetrate the ground. You
Mhm.
know, um, so then you start thinking, does this have something to do with time? The reflections are taking longer to come back, so the interpretation of the data is that it's further away, which makes it look like the data points are a bubble, underground, which we've
Mhm.
seen with GPS, with all sorts of other things. Don't know. It's confusing as hell. None of it makes any sense.
Too true. Too true. Roger, how about you? What are your thoughts on the bubble?
So I think it's exciting, and I know that they are changing the terminology from last season to kind of like where when they saw Pete's lidar and they thought it was like this cone shape coming down. Um, whether they call it like a cone, a bubble, or a dome. Um, I think that they're trying to come up. Like I don't mind the nomenclature or the name change. I think that as scientists, they're trying to best define what they think is there based on the experiments that they have. And
Mhm.
so to me, whatever they call it is fine. It's interesting though that within where they've defined those boundaries, and I think they talked about in the last episode putting up markers to look around for the boundary of that just the crazy stuff that happens where like we saw in the last episode where rockets are going around or being pushed, right? So they can't get into a space where we can physically walk through. I mean, they have people, they can have machines, things like that. It really is a strange area. And so I don't I like John was talking about, I really think that especially with the LiDAR and the things and the GPS, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense with the returns that they're getting and whatever it is. And to me, I think a lot of I'd really like to explore more of the time relativity there because something is happening to make those coordinates and the GPS stuff come back with either anomalous data showing like it's way into the ground or it's in the mesa, just things where it shouldn't be, versus when they do stuff outside of the bubble or way, way high above, like the GPS works fine. But anytime you enter that area, there's something that triggers uh, electronic malfunctions or things like that that are playing with it. And what that is, I sincerely hope that they get to the bottom of it. But it is really it's fun to see how that's evolved and how that they're applying different things to start measuring what is actually there and getting to the bottom of it. So I love the definitions and I hope that they continue to refine that information.
I have a new name for it. Just decided. It
Go
is
for
a
it.
hemispherical region of high WTF.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
And if you remember, John, I think the last conversation we had when we had Johnny Stratton joining us, you used the term prism, right? That there
Oh
was
yeah, the,
it
the
was almost
temporal prism.
it was
Yep.
almost like a
Yeah.
like a prismatic type of effect that we were seeing with the distortion of light and so forth, as you would if you had a like a prism where you're shining light through and you see it refracted and seemingly bent in all these different ways. And so that term has really stayed with me quite a bit. And sadly, I didn't have the presence of mind to ask Travis the last time we saw him when we were in
Mhm.
Alabama recently with the band. But But yeah, it's fascinating to me, and how the fact that they now, I mean, Pete, another one of the pretty cool changes is that Pete Kelsey is becoming more and more of a I don't know if I want to use the term permanent fixture on the team, but he's been there, prominently featured in most of the episodes that we've had thus far, the first 5 episodes of season 6, and he brings that expertise, that knowledge of imaging technology, like with lidar. And here's the thing that really stands out to me, guys, is that with all of these imaging uh, tests that they're doing, whether it's LiDAR or with the thermals, they're getting repeatable results, right? Because it's not just simply what happened last year, what we saw in season 5 with the cone zone. That wasn't just a one and done type of phenomena. They've seen those same types of signatures or anomalies, if you will, showing up on lidar that Pete has done subsequently with the same lidar device, the terrestrial based lidar and the slam scan lidar. So it's not like this is just something that maybe they're seeing that's, a little there's a perfectly rational explanation for. And what I thought was really interesting, John, was how they brought in one of the people who was the head or some other corporate representative for Faro, which is the company that makes the terrestrial lidar scanner that they use there on the ranch. And the anomaly reproduced itself the same way it did on the ranch when she looked at the data at the corporate headquarters or wherever it was after she had been to the ranch, and she witnessed the same thing firsthand. So, um, again, we've been hearing this term validation that Kaleb Bench, famously has used a number of times regarding his own experiences at the ranch. But we're also seeing that validation coming through these other avenues where the people who literally design this technology and make these tools, these fabulous tools that they use at the ranch, are seeing the same exact returns that the team is out there at the ranch. And for me, that's another notch that says, okay, this is clearly not bullshit. This is not a scam. This is really happening. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Uh, I think you're absolutely right. I think the people that call the show bullshit need to move on to something else. We're past that. Unless you think that they're all literally lying, which we know they're not. We know without question they are not lying about what they're discovering. We know that. I
Yes.
mean, we specifically know that. So yeah, it is kind of validating for them to see people like the lady representative that came from the company. What was the name of the company again?
Faro,
Oh,
Faro.
yeah. She was there, and you could see on her face like this shouldn't be happening.
It's not supposed to be possible, but yet
This is
there it
this is
is.
not something you see, yet we're seeing it, like I always say, this can't happen, but it's happening, and they keep getting uh, repeatable results of things that should not be possible that are continuing to happen that they have no explanation for. So yeah, I hope we see even more of that. But it's kind of nice to see outsiders who have no interest in this type of thing at all go onto the property, participate in these tests, and they leave equally as dumbfounded, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Roger, what about you? Was that something that stuck out in your mind as well, to see that we're finally getting validation of sorts from people that don't really have any vested interest in what goes on at the ranch, like this representative that Pete brought onto the ranch with the Faro technology. And so, how's that playing out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add other than what you guys said. I think it's very, very validating, um, especially for people that have followed the show since season 1, to really see just each season build and on top of each other, and the different experiments that they keep trying to help with validation. Um, And again, when you have multiple companies that don't really have skin in the game when it comes to Skinwalker Ranch, right? Like these are professional companies like the drone people, when they bring in lock precision, et cetera, right? All these companies that come in to just do the thing that they do well, right?
Mhm.
And they're people that are there like, wow, this is messed up. This never happens before. The equipment shouldn't function like that. And again, time and time again, like the more those people come on, the more I think they become believers and validating their own experiences there. I mean, I just go back to, and I can't remember what season it is, maybe season 4, where they have the astronomers come out, from Salt Lake City, and their telescopes that have behaved the same way because that's the way they're programmed to do. As soon as they point them up into the center of the triangle, something starts shutting them down. Something starts erasing the data in real time, and they're not connected to anything because all that was pre-done. And it's just again, it's just validation of people with scientific minds coming together, going, something weird is happening. This should not happen with the equipment that we've had. This doesn't happen in other places. So it is validating, and it's great to see that they continue to push those boundaries and get people to come out and experience it for themselves and sharing it with us too. So
Absolutely. And the other thing that I found really interesting is they did this. There's one episode of this current season called "Smoke It Out" or something like that,
yeah,
where they decided to. Uh, well, first of all, let's talk. Let's back up just a little bit. There was one experiment where they launched a rocket, and in the hopes of being able to quote unquote paint the anomaly, as they say. And again, they've tried it with flames, they've tried it with smoke, and this one episode that we saw this current season, they tried it with chalk dust, right? And there was a moment where they launched a rocket, and the rocket got to its to the altitude that it was supposed to get at, and it uh, detonated a charge that released a bunch of chalk dust, right? And we saw something happen that really was pretty remarkable in the sense that you had this burst of cloud of chalk dust that relatively stayed compact, suspended in air for what seemed to be several minutes. And you would think that at an altitude of several hundred feet, uh, there'd be just natural airflow and currents that would cause these chalk particles to disperse and spread out, right? And that's not at all what happened. And it was all caught on camera. And this chalk dust just kind of suspended right there in midair, seemingly undisturbed when the natural airflow currents should have caused it to disperse. And that for me was kind of another, well, there's the ranch being the ranch, right? so, so I thought that was interesting. And then they also did the experiment with a bonfire where they were hoping to again try to get something that would, you know, show the outline of whatever this anomaly is that's there in the triangle, and still trying to determine, is this something that's more transient in nature or is it always there? Um, so these are all questions that they're still trying to get to the bottom of. And I thought that was particularly interesting because we saw not just with the chalk dust, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but we also saw another instance where a rocket, after it was deployed and the chute deployed, that it kind of hung there in midair for a little while before it then descended back down. And we've seen other incidents happen so far in episodes this season where there's some unknown, unseen force that is pushing these rockets outward instead of allowing them to come back down straight into the triangle. Because as Travis said, these rockets are designed to go straight up and straight down. They're not sending them up with a trajectory that would cause them to go, on a particular angle. It's, straight up, straight down is how they should go. And we're seeing that these rockets may go up, but when they come down, when they get in that area of the triangle, there seems to be some aspect of physics that we don't quite understand yet. Again, there's that term anomalous, that anomalous event that's causing these rockets to seemingly be pushed toward the mesa. And in fact, some of them I think actually landed on top of the mesa when they should have come straight back down onto the triangle. So, Roger, what's your thoughts or observations on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen multiple times where things have been suspended in air rockets, right, as it come back down, that have been observed not only by the cameras but by the people at Skinwalker Ranch, like specifically Caleb and Travis, where they're like, "This is impossible. Things are getting caught." It's almost like, you've got you're filming and you just click stop on that camera, right? And it's just sitting there right in the air. And, it is, that area is highly anomalous. And I don't know, I think we could theorize all day on what, what can be there. And, I mean, we really don't know at the end of the day, but with the tests that they're doing, something is causing things to happen in a way that to us and viewers, when we're going about our daily lives here on Earth, walking around doing stuff, that just doesn't happen. And whether it's a time anomaly, some type of, like, again, going back to what you guys were talking about earlier, and a temporal prism, it's just the way we perceive things now, and we're catching more and more of it through the scientific work that they're doing there, is just, it's amazing, right? How is this possible? When you were talking about that episode of Smoke It Out, and they did those massive bonfires, and you know you would think with that much heat that it's putting off, they've got their flare out there, and around this fire you have deep, cold pockets. How is that even possible? I thought about that a long time, and I'm like, I can't, I can't theorize that. Using a simple flare camera pointing at a fire, you're going to see it's extremely hot, right? The
Right.
the color will measure hot, and yet around these huge bonfires, there were multiple cold cold spots, right? And it wasn't just like, oh, here's just one cold spot, but it was like amorphous. It was moving. It was almost alive
Hmm.
as it like went around these different bonfires. So yeah, I think whatever is there, um, whether I don't know. It's really, it's hard to describe. It's hard to put to words of what is actually happening there. So I'd like to get John's thoughts on it too, just because of what's going on there. It's really, it's outside the scope of things that I've dealt with in my life. Just work, job, that kind of stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The differential flare, I can't remember what that guy called it. It was something that he had developed. I think it was some sort of differential flare, though.
Yeah, differential fluid.
I wonder, the dark spots that show as cold, like I wonder what that maps to into like real temperature. Is it cold only because it's a little colder than the surrounding region, but because of the way it does the color gradations, that part just looks like it's really cold, but maybe it's only 10 degrees cooler or something like that? Or is it like legitimately, 20, 30 degrees colder? So I'd like to know the absolute values and not just the differential colors. But yeah, stuff like that makes no sense. And was that the same night as they had the rocket launch? And then when they looked at no, it was LiDAR, the LiDAR later. I think it was the same episode though. They had LiDAR that showed the smoke trail moved over like 10
About
feet or
about
10 yards.
10 to 12 feet from where the actual launching platform was. And you could clearly see the LiDAR return clearly shows the launching pad, but
Mhm.
then the rocket plume is for some reason 10 to 12 feet away from where that platform should be. And
And the most confusing thing about that is that's the only thing that's shifted in the image that I could see.
right.
It's not like this whole strip of the image was moved over.
Yeah.
Only the plume, only the smoke moved
Hmm.
in the LiDAR image. Everything else was still where it was supposed to be. I don't get that. That doesn't.
Yeah.
I
Again,
can't comprehend what does that.
it's almost like that temporal prismatic effect kind of type thing where what can account, because what is lidar? Lidar is light, and lidar is points of light that are being sent out to do a 3D imaging of objects that are above ground or in the air. And so if there's technology out there that some, you know, let's say Earth-based technology that has been developed that can spoof LiDAR, holy crap, that's a game changer right
Well,
there.
and what's different about the smoke compared to the stand that the rocket was on, the launcher?
Case in
What's
point.
different about that? I mean, the laser is going to reflect off of both equally.
Yes.
Is there what about the smoke made it susceptible to whatever the hell this is? Everything else was in where it was supposed to be, and only the smoke moved. I
Right.
don't get it. It's
So
something that just now occurred to me too about this dome thing is they've had a lot of anomalous stuff outside the known dome. I'm wondering if there are multiple levels to this dome. What if outside, what if they've only detected the inner dome because that's where most of their experiments are? I wonder if they were able to do experiments outside of it, if they could map maybe another shell. Maybe
Yeah.
there are layers to this.
Maybe
Like,
there's a bigger dome over the entire Uinta Basin because the whole basin is
right.
a hotbed of strange phenomena and anomalous activity going back hundreds of years that we're aware of.
Yep.
So that's a very, very good question. Roger, you're about to say something?
Well, I was just thinking about what, like, with all this stuff that happens, and specifically it triggered the thought when John was talking about, specifically in that LiDAR, the smoke plume, that was the only thing affected in that image. And it kind of makes me, ask the question, why is it happening? What what is poking that response specifically? Because we know, and I think that there's varying thoughts, and I would be curious to hear what our viewers on this podcast or listeners have to think about this. But we know that, and we were talking about this kind of the pre-show before we started recording here, that there seems to be an intelligence out there that has precognitive abilities, and that's been demonstrated before. It's kind of like that trickster one step ahead, that's been documented, even with the Bigelow era and things like that. Um, is it that, or is there something that we like from the US government that is there that we just don't understand because they have really advanced technology? And that again, it goes to like, why do these things happen? Why, when you're in the triangle, do you get weird LiDAR returns? You get GPS when it'll work great in other places. What is it trying to hide? And it almost seems to me that anytime you get in the triangle or something, it provokes some type of response. And I don't know. I'm just going to use this as a theoretical example. Almost, it's either you've got like some AI computer there or some intelligence that is able to say like, oh, they're doing this, so I'm going to do this. And is that good or bad, right? Are they letting us see these things? Are these things that are like, oh my gosh, they're getting too close to what is here, and we don't want them to know, so we're gonna try to do different things to lead them down these different paths. I don't have a good answer for that. I'm just really curious as, I'm looking at this season and really trying to understand like why is it reacting in the way that it has, because it's almost like every time they go in and get a little bit closer, we just have more questions because
Right.
something different happens, and who's behind it? Like, are there well, like I think we've talked, you guys, before about, it seems like there's multiple things happening on the ranch. It's not just one. I don't think we can categorize it as there's one thing that is controlling everything. It seems like there's multiple things going on, whether that's in the mesa, that's above the triangle, whether that's Homestead 2, Homestead 3, Eastfield, Southfield. There just seems to be a lot of, I would, for lack of better terms, lots of hands from different things that are going on. And I don't know, does that mean that there are multiple entities or intelligences that are working together hand in hand? They're not working together hand. I don't know. These are the things that keep me up at night and really want me to like, I can't wait for the next episode. What experiment are they going to do? Right. So it's exciting, but at the same time, I'm like, I just have to ask that question. Why? Why does it, when they are trying to poke the hornet's nest, why does it respond the way? And again, right? Why just the smoke plume? Why didn't it,
Right.
affect anything else there? What
Right.
is that something that like, okay, you really need to concentrate on like rockets or, is that the next step? Or is that kind of like a red flag, like, haha, we're tricking somebody? I don't know. I don't have the answer to it, but it's fun to think about.
Yeah. No,
I disagree.
all
It's
ex
not fun to think. It's maddening to think about, Roger.
Yeah.
This crap will drive you crazy.
and that's something that we've been saying ever since the beginning is that there appears to be multiple intelligences, or if not multiple intelligences, there is an intelligence that is at work here that is just uh, unimaginable. I mean, truly, with the things that we are seeing, and it's hard to say. I mean, it looks to me like none of this is an illusion. It's because they're able to verify the things that they're seeing on multiple sensor platforms. And I mean, they get stuff that shows up on high speed cameras, and then they get stuff that shows up on in the infrared band. It's all out of the spectrum of visible light that humans can naturally see. So there's, and I guess that's what it all comes down to. And it's the thing that either just further serves to heighten your curiosity and your fascination, or it just makes you throw your hands up and say, you know what, screw this. This is all bullshit. I'm going to go back to watching Cupcake Wars. Right. So,
Yeah, I've been there a few times.
yeah, well, hey, let's face it. There's some pretty cool shit that you see on Cupcake Wars, right? But that's beside the point. I'm a big Cupcake fan, in case anybody wants to know. Shh. But anyhow, we're derailing again. Stop it, Jim. So, but no, it's one of those things that truly does. It either frustrates people to no end, and when I say people, I'm talking about viewers of Skinwalker, of the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. So, if you look at the reaction that they have, imagine what it's like for the folks that are on the team out there at Skinwalker Ranch, for Travis Taylor, for Eric Bard, and Thomas, and Caleb, and Travis, uh, and Jimm, and Sam, and all the experts and all the vendors that are subject matter experts that come out there. It's like you how many times have we seen instances where somebody who's an expert in their field goes out onto the ranch and they have this attitude of, okay, I'm a rational person, I have science to back me up, I'm going to figure this out in a matter of hours, a matter of days maybe. And what ends up happening, the ranch just has that knack of saying, watch this, hold my beer, you're going to love this. And we've seen that scenario play out year after year. And it's for me, I don't find it frustrating because it shows that there's truly something out there, intentionally or otherwise, interacting with the team, that is responding to the various stimuli that it's putting out there. And I think it's fascinating to watch. And the fact that we're seeing the same type of things happen multiple times across, here we are now in the sixth season that we're watching of this docuseries. Uh, I can't be anything other than fascinated and completely, brought in. And to be fair, to a point that you made earlier, John, we have the we have the privilege of having met all the members of the team, and some of them we know very well. We've gotten to know them. We've gotten to become good friends with them, and we know what these guys are like off the ranch, and we know that they are not at all the kind of guys that are just going to do it for the sake of entertainment, right? These are guys that are genuinely as perplexed as we the viewers are, and to their credit, they are doing everything as on the level and science and fact based as they can. They're checking and double checking and rechecking their work. They're using AI systems to help them parse through the untold gigabytes or terabytes or whatever, the term is once you get beyond tera. But there's just so much data out there, and they are still, as we're going through season number 6, they're still being led and driven by the data of the results that they're getting, what they see. And what I think is really cool, just kind of shifting gears a little bit here, guys. Um, and we've mentioned it so many times before, but all three of us are members of the Skinwalker Ranch Insider Program, which is kind of like this great community of people that are every bit as curious as we are about this phenomenon known as Skinwalker Ranch. And the insiders have been able to play a valuable role in the observation of phenomena that occurs at the ranch, because the eyes of so many people, all literally all over the world, are now on that ranch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the phenomena, is not disappearing. The phenomena is, still rears its head. If you're somebody that has access to if you ever sit and watch the live camera feeds from Skinwalker Ranch, which, as a Skinwalker Ranch insider, you do have the access to see those 24-hour cameras, high definition cameras. Uh, every once in a while, you see some pretty fascinating and pretty interesting stuff that shows up on those cameras. So you literally have the attention of the world, not just via the docuseries, but you have the insider program, and so many eyes, so many consciousness, if you will, so many consciousnesses. Sorry, it's the Mountain Dew talking. Uh, so much attention, I guess is the way I would say it, is focused on the ranch from all over the world. And the phenomena has not, gone underground, as it were. It hasn't disappeared. It's doing what it's always been doing. And I think that in and of itself is pretty amazing. The fact that we still are seeing the ranch being the ranch. It's kind of become a little bit of a interesting catchphrase, but the ranch does have its own, you know, intelligence and its own personality. And speaking of which, folks, we are going to be joined right now. Little surprise for you all. We have somebody here that is a team member of Skinwalker Ranch who's going to be joining us right now. And it looks like he's ready to come online right about now. And I don't know, can you hear us yet, buddy?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
There he is.
Sure can. There he is.
Um,
Good to see you, Kaleb. Thanks for joining us.
Sorry, I'm not fashionably late at all.
You're on ranch time. It's to be expected, right?
I don't know.
It's all
No.
good. We're
Yeah,
happy to have you on.
good to see you. Yeah, we've just been talking about we've just been recapping kind of what's gone on for the first 5 episodes. We've been talking about um, some of the experiments, like the bonfire experiments and the chalk dust, some of the interesting anomalies that we've seen so far, and just kind of offering up our insights and what we've observed as the first 5 episodes of the docuseries have aired this season, and how excited we are. We were just talking about the fact of how the ranch does kind of seem to have its own kind of like personality, if it were. We always hear the ranch this, the ranch that, and it does seem that there's still, and we've touched upon this a lot of times here on this podcast, how there appears to be, if not one intelligence, multiple intelligences of something that's out there that interacts and responds to stimuli and all kinds of great stuff that you guys are doing out there. So with that, how are you doing, buddy? It's good to see you.
I'm doing great. Good to see you guys. It's been a while. It's almost been a little too long since I've been able to talk with you guys. But no, you're right. We have those conversations all the time, even especially now. Are we dealing with something that does have its own, sentience and all that good stuff? And it's really hard at times to say no to that.
Right.
Um, and You, I got to go talk to my one friend because he said something really interesting that uh, caught my attention a couple weeks ago. He worked in the CIA and was in the Army for a long time. And he said that he was using AI almost 15 years ago.
Wow.
And so I don't know what level it was at, and that's where I don't want to say too much on that, but it was one of those things that he mentioned. And I was like, wait a minute, you know, and there's things that have happened on the ranch that I'm going, how in the context that he was talking about, I was like, oh, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that little nugget, and I feel I need to go talk to him, and that'd probably be more of a offline conversation that I'd probably have with you guys later too. But
Sure, sure.
it's just made me think about some of the things that we've seen
Mhm.
electronically, but then at the same time, um, there's the situations that shouldn't be able to be possible. That's not dealing with electronics.
Yeah,
So, and and that's where it's yeah, the ranch is its own thing at this point.
yeah. Yeah,
That's,
it's go
oh,
ahead, John.
no, I was just going to say, we were talking about some of our favorite, parts of the season so far and some of the interesting things that we've seen. But I wanted to say now that you're here, one of my favorite parts of this season is the near constant look of concern on your face in every episode. Like at the table recaps at the end of each episode, you're like, what the is going
Uh,
on?
yeah.
It's like, what else are we going to learn that makes no sense whatsoever?
Like I'll be honest with you, I completely forgot about the rocket freezing in the air above the triangle during our fire experiment. Like, how is that something you forget?
Right?
We after it happened last year, we were like, it was such a one-off thing, but then it happened again, and we were like, oh, it happened again. You know, and that's really what more can you say aside of why we're always saying that's crazy? That's so out there. That's
Yeah,
Literally nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense.
yeah.
None of it makes sense.
And it's like, and we have those conversations. Is this a thermal low? Is this the rocket riding one of those thermal waves or whatnot? But it's like, as Travis and Eric have talked about, your bird's moving. It's able to correct itself so it can stay there.
right.
These things are just sitting there, and they're way heavier than a lot of those birds. So that's one hell of like a thermal layer there, if you will.
Yeah, we were also talking about, the astonishment that we experience as viewers is pretty intense. I can only imagine the level it's got to be for you guys that are there on the scene while it's unfolding in real time. Because again, what we see through the docuseries is less than 1% roughly of all the footage that the Prometheus crew films out there. So um, that's just got to be a moment where like you see those things like the rocket that just suspends there in midair, or the chalk dust that just doesn't seem to disperse after it's released by the rocket, and any one of these other amazing things that, like we've seen with the thermal imaging with the bonfire, and how there appeared to be these inexplicable cold spots when we're dealing with a heat source that is, really, really intense heat. So it's like I mean, I can't imagine if it's that amazing for us, the viewers, to watch, how that's got to be for you guys, and they're witnessing it unfold in real time. I mean, that's got to be amazing, right?
And you think about those the fires with the garbage bins there. The amount of smoke and heat coming off of those things, you couldn't get more than 20 feet from them without really having to deal with that heat that was coming off of them. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with like just a simple fire out in your backyard or when you're camping. And if you get it really big and hot, you can't even get within a couple feet of it, right?
Right.
Now, when you really realize where those black spots were or those cold spots, in Dave Mason's stuff, they were only 30 feet above the flames.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of smoke and a lot of heat still in that area. And for us to see those large of cold areas and that consistently, yeah, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Or better yet, where's that heat going? Or, what's there that can deflect that much heat?
Exactly. And that's one of those rabbit holes that we find ourselves going down as viewers, where it's like, what you're just trying to rack your brain, with my very limited understanding of science and physics as it is. It's still, I recognize the fact that that's not something that you ordinarily would see with a fire of that intensity, and really with any of these experiments that we've seen run over not just the course of this season but the previous seasons, where we've seen some truly jaw-dropping anomalous incidents happen. You know, going back to the cone zone from last season, which was like when I had my very first literal jump off the couch moment as a viewer of the docuseries, and then just so many other things that have happened that have just left me scratching my head. It's truly we were talking a short while before you joined us, Kaleb, how the people that dismiss this truly are not watching the show. There's no way that these people that just dismiss it out of hand can honestly, they quite obviously do not watch the show, because I don't see how anybody who genuinely watches the show and pays attention could be anything but just surprised and just completely gobsmacked over some of the things that we see unfold on camera. And um, we were also talking about the fact that we have Roger and John and I, we have the privilege of having gotten to know you and several other members of the team, and we know that you guys are just every bit as perplexed and mystified by the things that you see out there. It's just there's truly no place else like it on Earth that I'm aware of, and it's really it really is the frontier of things that we just haven't figured out yet. And it blows my mind.
Oh yeah, and I love the example of what happened with the calf in season 5. I a lot of times I have or most recently, I should say, most of my conversations have been with people who they've maybe heard of the show at this point, but they've never actually watched it or something like that, or maybe they watched the first 2 seasons, maybe the first 3, and then I understand that there are challenges in actually getting to watch the show on different platforms and things,
Mhm.
which is out of our control, and it kind of sucks. But um, when I show people the pictures off my phone of that calf, and then on my phone I also have the picture of what happened to my own eye, and I go, this happened in 2019 with my injury, and then you look at what happened to this calf.
Right.
That happened just 2 years ago and was caught live on a camera on while we're out there filming at the drill site. And just that calf experience, you tell me how that's fake, or you tell me how anyone can do that. And that's where I know there are direct energy weapons out there. At this
Mhm.
point, people, we know that there's laser systems, we know that there are sound systems. What else is there? Because at this point, we know the aircraft, and there's these different levels of technology that have been developed. What are those? Who controls them?
Right.
Because we get something. This kind of comes back to the comment that I want to go have this conversation with my friend, because if he was using some kind of AI 15 years ago, that's just more proof that they've developed stuff, and a part of that technology is obviously hidden. But how long does it take for the technology to become usable or safe enough, if you will, that they
Right.
start going, well, we could probably start disseminating this to the public because it'll help these industries?
Mhm.
Or those industries who developed it start going, okay, well, we've got it to a point where the military or the powers to be or whoever feel they have enough control over the dangerous side of it, if you will, that they go, okay, well, we can release a part of this to the public. And it just keeps begging the question of what kind of technology is really out there that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of
No.
goes back, Caleb, to the thing I was thinking about earlier and talking to the guys about is with all the stuff that's happening out there, like what's the why behind it? You've got this 512-acre ranch in beautiful country, not, it's not an urban population out there. It's not like Salt Lake City, Utah, or anything like that. So why are these things happening? Especially that happened to you, the calf and things like that. Obviously, there's something there that is happening. But I think that's what makes I guess, the episodes and just the whole scientific nature of the work being done out there super exciting, right? Because it just you build that foundation and it just keeps, what's the next experiment? What's the next level, right? To keep poking, as Travis says, the hornet's nest there to see what happens. And it's like every time you do something, you get more questions because something different happens. Then it's like, oh, okay. And where are we being led? Like, where are you guys being led with these things that happen? It's just, one of those things that again, we were talking about it. It's fascinating. I think sometimes viewers of the show are probably like, why can't we just solve this right now? But we know that scientific work takes a long time, and we may not ever get answers. We don't know, and hopefully we do. But I just think it's crazy some of the stuff that happens out there, and I always ask myself, why is this happening? And try to just keep an open mind as to what could possibly be out there. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You're hitting on two or three different topics there. Why? The big question is why. Um, Travis and I and the team, we've had a lot of these discussions is if this is some kind of technology that say humans control, why are you showing that capability in the middle of a ranch in the middle of nowhere and that's being filmed as a television show? Right? If this is, say, some kind of military tech, why are you showing your cards of what capabilities you have to potential enemies? Well, you don't do that. If you have capabilities that gives you an edge, you don't show that to your competitors and tell it's like an absolute necessary time of showing, hey, we can do this. You do everything you can to keep it secret, you, you know, and then the other side of it is, um, oh gosh, the other the other topic that you were hitting on, I just left my head. Um, but yeah, this ranch and what we're seeing out there, why? And the results that we're getting now more consistently. Oh, that was it. The science side. Um, again, when my understanding is if you go to a big science study, like say NASA or one of these big programs, you have like 10 years, anywhere from 5 to 10 years, depending on the contract or whatever, to do your studies. And then you have so many years to really go through and look at the data and really compile it before you ever have to show anything. Right? Because they're like, you got to make sure your information's correct before you show anything. And our process is definitely not that. We're doing these experiments and then you're seeing them and our initial reactions and our initial look at the data within a year. Like we're not given 10 years to go through and do all these experiments over and over and over again when no one's watching and then just compile like the most amazing things after 10 years and go, hey, this is what we found.
Right.
You're literally actually seeing us build the investigation as we're going. You're seeing us trying to obviously marry the science investigation with the television side and and those are two different worlds with two different goals in mind.
Right.
And they're trying to work together to get the best result possible for both.
Mhm.
And so yeah, if we were doing some of this stuff on the science side the way it should be, we'd be doing the same exact thing over and over and over again. But we are changing some of the experiments up because it's more visually stimulating for the viewer, right?
Right.
And that was one of our major conversations at one point was, okay, last year we did one helicopter. Okay, well, this year we're going to have two. Oh, so that means next year we're just going to have four flying around. That's not how this works.
Right. Yeah, it's trying to balance between what what you can do with it, like to make the like the next season better, right? Because
Yeah.
people are like, yeah, if you came back and it was just the same, I, I guess with the repeatability of things and trying to get there, you can't just do like yeah, you have, I think you said it well, Caleb. You have the science side and you have the entertainment side, and they're competing against each other because they have two definite, different goals in mind. And so what I think you guys have done strategically and brilliantly well is that you're able to explain um, the science and what you've done with these experiments, and then knowing that, okay, how are we creative enough to say we still need to follow up on this but change it just slightly enough, right, to yield similar results or get different results to take you to the next level. And that's got to be a tough balance for sure, but I think you guys have done it well.
Yeah, and that's where this year, there's been a lot of talk on the experiments, and then obviously follow up with like the ceramic material that they teased at the beginning of the season. And I know you guys are going to start seeing more of the drilling process really in depth because you've only got a taste of the hell that drilling was last year. Um, and and the craziness that came from that, and then with the bubble itself, or the structure that we're really nailing down is excuse me, it's out there, it's real. And I'm excited for this next episode. They tease it a little bit with what happens with this drone above over by Homestead 2. And that was one of the ones that really
Can't wait to see it.
blew our
Well,
mind.
one of the things that I always say regarding the show is that a lot of these naysayers and people that just don't seem to have the patience for letting the scientific process play out. These people, it seems that we live in an age where people want instant satisfaction and instant resolution
Yeah.
to whatever the scenario is playing out on screen. And I don't know how many times I've had to remind people, look, the scientific method is deliberate, and it takes time to be able to verify or falsify whatever hypothesis ends up getting formed. And you're not going to get that kind of resolution over the space of a 42-minute episode on the docuseries, and you're not going to get that kind of resolution over necessarily multiple seasons. I mean, look at where we are. We're in season 6 right now, and we may have a little better idea of what some of the things might be, and we're still seeing new things that we didn't think were even possible that are starting to play out before our very eyes now. But it still comes down to, as you were saying, Caleb, it's that scientific process, and it's what really sets the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch apart from any other docu-series that tackles these kind of topics, is that you not only have the subject matter experts to help substantiate the data that's going through here, but you've also just got this process that thankfully Eric, as the lead investigator, is just he has that saying that I just love hearing every time he says it. He says, "I want to get caught red-handed in the act of learning,"
Yeah.
and I think that's what it's all about. And it's been so much fun to be watching as a viewer, to just watch all these things play out. It's a great time to be alive.
Oh yeah, you make me think about our experiment when we're in the triangle again, and Jim's drone is going south, and it goes into this area where years ago during one of our other big experiments, the helicopter, one of the cameras on it, actually saw light moving around in the river.
Right.
And Jim's drone is going down into this area, and it has one of Eric's GPS markers on it. Well, and then Eric starts getting the missing data, starts having the GPS stuff, but then what did we see happen this time that's new on Eric's end? Something was messing with the code itself live. And he hadn't seen that before. And so what's doing that live, right?
Yeah.
And I know they brought another guest on that they really go down that rabbit hole, and what he said was phenomenal. And so I know they're going to be playing that at some point, and if they don't, I don't know who's making the cuts there, but it would be disappointing. Yeah. But I want to say that I know they're going to be playing it because I've heard some of the conversation in some of the teasers. But when that guest comes out and people see and hear that conversation, it's wild, or even parts of it, and that's one of the things that's kind of rough too. Is example I can think of is our DNA results. I'm sure you guys have heard this, but people who are listening to your show might not have heard this in another conversation. Was our conversation with Ben during the DNA result, and the detail that he went into. This isn't like a 30-minute conversation. We were there for like 3 or 4 hours talking with Ben about these results and why he got to where he was. And the big one, and I completely forgot about this until Tom mentioned it again, was when he was going through the digestive systems of the predator animals, and why he was saying that whatever this was is not a local bear like the grizzlies or black bears that we have out here,
no way.
Or a wolf
or a cougar
or cougars, was the acidity, the acidic processes that broke down the coyote bone, because they were like gelatinous or spongy. They weren't. I get like wolves and other predators will eat bones for them,
right?
But the bones themselves won't really break down.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like they'll get like broken up by chewing and things like that, and then come out, but they're not like melted like what this bone was that Ben had found. Again, It was like squishy.
Yeah, and that was the I'll tell you, and again, my admittedly limited scientific background. One of the things that I've wondered is I've been thinking of these other predator animals that would, swallow something, including the bones. And the only other thing that I can think of would be some of the larger reptiles, like alligator, crocodile, Komodo dragon, monitor lizard, things of that nature. And so far as we know, there's no record of any of those large reptiles in the state of Utah. And the reptiles that you do have, and you're talking what, rattlesnakes there on the ranch. I mean, something like that's not going to, it's not going to kill a coyote, let alone eat it. So, yeah, that kind of kicks us into this other discussion that we were about to dive into, which is we have this great collection of accounts in the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, where it talks about the encounter that the Shermans had with what they claim was a dire wolf, and some of these other extraordinary claims. And I'll admit it myself, in the beginning, I was kind of like, okay, this is a great collection of stories, but there's nothing really to substantiate them other than the eyewitness testimony, which of course should carry weight as it does. But now in the last couple of seasons, we're actually seeing this physical evidence start to manifest of some of these more extraordinary uh, lore, if you will, that's associated with the ranch, like these things like a direwolf, because direwolf, as far as we know, went extinct over 10,000 years ago. And so, even if it happens to be an uncatalogued descendant of the direwolf that you guys encountered in the river last year, that in and of itself is pretty damn extraordinary. So, but it also takes me back to conversations that Roger and I have had with Chris Bartell and with you previously about instances where you have encountered large animal tracks on the ranch. And now we're seeing that story kind of play out a little bit more bit by bit, where there appears to be something that may be behind these, these tracks that have been left in the past. And so, what is, with you in particular, being involved with security for the ranch, that's got to concern you quite a bit, doesn't it? I mean, that's got to be like one of those holy shit moments when, and we kind of caught a glimpse of that in this last episode, where it's like, okay, there's a predator animal that is able to eat coyotes, not just kill them, but eat them. And I mean, you're the one person on the ranch that's now tasked with the security of having to make sure that everything is safe, not just from human threats, but you may now have to contend with this unknown species of something that's out there. What is how does that play out in your thought process? I mean, what is that like when you're starting to watch this story kind of develop, where there's actual physical evidence to some of these more extraordinary stories that have been out there for a long time?
Yeah, you're hitting on a really good subject here with the book of the Hunt for the Skinwalker. Because again, that's how we treated it. It was, oh, those are great ghost stories at this point.
Right.
There's no evidence, there's nothing that can collaborate with it. And we also brought a guest on uh 2 different seasons or 2 different years, and who was there. One of the nephews of the Shermans who was living on the ranch when some of this stuff happened.
Right.
And so there were things that were said in the book that he corrected or told us the story, and there were obvious differences. And now, again, our guest was like 10 years old at the time that these things happened, and then this is years and years later. So how has the memory changed possibly, or where was there some artistic license in the telling of these stories? But there were parts that stayed pretty consistent. But I can tell you one of the contradictory points was when they shot the direwolf, the story in the beginning of the book. The nephew told us, "Oh, we killed it. We buried it over there."
Hmm.
And that's where he was like, "I don't remember exactly where it's buried, but it's over in this direction over here, along this fence line."
Mhm.
And so again, this is 20, maybe 30 years ago now at this point. He probably doesn't remember the exact spot that is buried, but he showed us a general area. And then we're going, well, we don't have the time to go over and maybe see if we dig up a skeleton here, right?
Right.
And then in the book, the people, they say they shoot the wolf and it trots off, and they follow the tracks down to the river where it disappears. And so obviously we have some similarities here where we're finding a carcass of what's been identified physiologically as a dire wolf, with some supporting evidence on the DNA side that this is probably a DNA or a dire wolf, or some kind of canine that we don't know what it is yet,
Mhm.
at the very least. And then Pete Kelsey had the experience where he was out. He went over to the Triangle. This was in October a couple of years ago, and he took the time to go out to do a scan. But then he found these massive tracks, and he took a picture of those and with his size 13 foot right next to it, and you can see how big these prints are. So he comes back all white faced, going, "Look at these tracks." And I'm like, "Great! Now I'm the one that gets to go out there and see if there's a giant wolf running around out here."
And now people know why you're always armed when you're out there on the ranch.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here going, "Man, I might have to pick up a bigger gun." Um, too bad for me, right? Um,
That's rough for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Poor gun.
It's
Darn it.
hard times.
hard times, terrible, terrible. But same thing, and that's where we're going, okay, what else in this book are they talking about that, okay, we understand that the story might have changed or been stretched. I don't know. Because again, stories can change from one person to the next, right? So,
Right.
but then there's parts in that book that I think we have seen other examples of and have caught live with the television series. But it at this point it's crazy what we're catching.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even imagine. I mean, Direwolf just was not on my bingo card. Last season when you guys discovered the carcass there in the creek, I was if there was one thing you had told me before that season started that we would show up on an episode, that was seriously like so far down the list that and now that we have supporting DNA evidence that is really just extraordinary. I mean, again, it's another one of those instances where jaw floor, jaw floor. And so it's yeah, it's like the ranch is the gift that keeps on giving.
Well, and that, this is one of those things with the ranch that is pretty fantastic when you really think about it. We're covering such a gambit of phenomenology, really. From cryptids potentially, because there's things that we found out there, and I feel pretty okay with talking about some of them that might relate to, say, Bigfoot, as much as I kind of hate to say it, um, because we're not a Bigfoot hunting show, never
Right.
have been. But we're I can tell you, I found prints out there with multiple times now at this point, showing a gait that I can't replicate. That I can tell you, Chris Bartell couldn't replicate. It would have to be someone over 7 feet tall easily to have a gait as long as we found out there before.
Wow.
And then the direwolf thing. Um, so you're getting in like cryptozoology at that point.
Yep.
And as much as it kills us that we didn't take at least the entire head of the animal, because that would have told us without a doubt what it was, just from the bone structure. But when we found that thing in the river, we were like, "Oh, this is a nasty dead dog."
Yeah, I can't imagine how bad that must have smelled. Ooh.
Oh, it's nasty. And but then come to find out, it's probably potentially one of the biggest finds in scientific
Right.
history, at least on an animal side. Because yeah, I know in Russia and Alaska are these really far north areas that they're finding, completely frozen animals
Hmm.
like mammoths and woolly rhinos and cave
Right.
bears.
Right.
They're able to go in and see what they ate and all that craziness.
Hmm.
Yeah, but nothing alive, or that was within a couple days of being alive. And that also goes into, when you go out into this area, there are stories even still of people who have claimed that they've seen large wolves
Yeah.
or large canines running around, and they're freaked out by it
Yeah.
because these are like normal canines that these people are running into. And then on that side, we know that, um, like the DNR says, there's no wolf packs in Idaho because when they reintroduced them up into Yellowstone into Colorado, we know wolves will only stay where they're reintroduced. They won't
Yeah.
actually go into other states. They understand
Yeah.
state,
Yeah.
boundaries. So of course there's no wolves down here. But it's even with these aren't regular canines that can be identified.
Right. Yeah, it just leaves me completely mystified. I mean, it's the ramifications of this discovery alone. I mean, even if it ends up being a situation where you've had this population of, let's say, dire wolves that for whatever reason never died out, you would think there would have been telltale signs left, discovered by people throughout the basin, because these animals would more likely than not be traveling off the ranch because wild creatures not going to respect the property boundaries, right? So, but and it's funny you mentioned about the Bigfoot thing, and when we tie up here, I got to tell you about my brother who lives up in Idaho has been having some really strange stuff happen that I'm one of those people that's always been kind of on the fence about Bigfoot. It's like, I don't discount the possibility at all that it could be real, but you know, um, it's just something I haven't really spent a lot of time debating. Although I will say I do really like Expedition Bigfoot. I think Russ and Maria are they've gotten some pretty compelling returns from some of the things that they've experienced on their show. But yeah, I did not ever expect the direwolf to become a topic of serious, not only serious discussion, but actually having physical evidence to back up, and not just the physical evidence via the jawbone, but also the DNA results that Ben and Colossal shared with us. Wow, I mean, just really mind blowing. Um, just want to kind of tie back in, John, with a point that John has talked about a number of times, and that is with the ranch, especially when we see instances where, like with the laser experiments, where we see these bizarre behaviors that should not be possible with lasers. And John has talked about how it's almost like there's like prismatic effect, like you're viewing the ranch with a bubble through a prism, where we're seeing light behave in ways that we, as much as we understand of physics and optical physics, that these things should not be possible. So, John, you can probably articulate the point far better than I could, but just kind of tell Caleb a little bit about your prism
Well,
thing
I
there.
was specifically I was referring to the during the drilling a couple years ago. You got the 33 megahertz beacon on the front of it, and then it hits something, and suddenly you see, instead of just the 33 megahertz, peak on the analyzer, you see at distinct intervals going both directions, almost like reflections. And I was like, that's almost like a temporal prism, where instead of light getting spread out into different colors, you've got some getting spread out, but it's spread out across time, forward and backwards. So the stuff that is getting sent to the future, that causes the wavelengths to get a little bit longer. So that would show up as peaks to the left. And the one that's going into the past makes the peaks short, closer together, makes your wavelength closer, your frequency different. So that would be on the other side. And I even mentioned that one time to Travis, and he just grinned at me and he's like, we had that exact conversation. But the point is, it almost does seem like there is some sort of refraction, or it's almost like there's a barrier, or thermocline. Like if you're in the ocean, it's a thermocline. If you're on submarines, or you've got refractive materials like air up against water. There's a things happen as light goes from one medium to the other, it refracts. It's almost like that happens, but not just with light. It's almost like it happens with time. Like time just gets weird. It's not just light, like time gets weird.
Yeah. And we've mentioned this multiple times. One of the biggest takeaways that we took away the 1 year of filming was we had three or four separate experiments where the big takeaway was a time difference, and that time difference in all three or four of those experiments was a 7 second time interval between the different equipment. Uh, that being Dronegeddon, the two drone fields, the one in the Eastfield Canyon and the one at the Triangle, were on the same exact network that had been bulletproofed and all that good stuff by Preston and his group. And they were supposed to take off at the exact same time. Well, what you see is group one in the triangle lift off. And when it hits that 30-second or that 30-foot mark, I want to say it was around the same time that the 7 seconds happens. So you have all these drones hit that spot, and then the drones in the Eastfield Canyon finally lift off again after 7 seconds, and then that's when all the drones in
Wow.
in the triangle think that they got teleported over half a mile away instantaneously, and all of them fall out of the sky. And then there was another experiment, and I don't know if they'll ever show it or not, but we had clocks. I won't go into it too much, but we had two clocks that were set, or I want to say actually three clocks, two on the delivery system, and then one down by the table. Actually, it was four. Sorry. Yeah, two on the delivery system and two that were paired to each clock at the science table. And one of them was set on a metal piece of equipment, and then the other one was actually kind of hanging over where there wasn't any of that metal that could block the signal. There was a 7 second difference between those clocks.
Wow.
Which was the lowdown of it. And then I'm trying to remember, there was one more, and I want to say it also had to deal with some of the drones. Like I want to say Pete Kelsey's or someone's. I'd have to go look, but there was again a 7 second difference in that experiment. And so, yeah, the question of, is something messing with the timing of the devices themselves, like the GPS? Are we seeing a timing issue from the signals?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it an actual something like messing with the signal itself? That's something we're still trying to figure out. And then I think you guys are all insiders. I think you've seen this with the ranch clocks at certain locations.
Right.
That for what and Eric drives him nuts. So he'll pull out he'll stop people from being able to see the time because he's trying to fix the timing issues that keep happening again to like the package information that's coming from the cameras and that, but at the same time, why the time? And then personally, and I mentioned this in one of our lives a couple of weeks, or I think maybe even this week, but my personal vehicle, I bought it. It was fine, worked great, no issues. Take it to the ranch, start having battery issues. Come to find out the one was dead. Essentially, it was just having a hard time recharging itself, and just got to the point where I had to replace it. But along with that, the clock on my radio keeps resetting itself to a 12-hour offset and resets itself to military time.
Wow.
So I'll set my clock, say, at like, say 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. And when I go to the ranch, it gets reset to a 12-hour offset. But again, military time, not the regular 12-hour cycle.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me like whichever side, but I've just noticed that if I do that, my clock gets flipped over to a 12-hour reset with military time. So if it's 11 o'clock a.m., my truck camera or my truck clock will show 2,300 hours. Doesn't matter what I do. Always resets to that.
Well, we came up earlier, you've got the dome, the cone, the bubble. Came up with a new name. It's a hemispherical region of high WTF.
Yeah, right. I like that. It's better than the bubble.
This episode is brought to you by the letters W, T, and F.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I really like Eric's model that he's created of it because it's not necessarily a bubble. It's very reactive, very
Mhm.
dynamic. Because still, we don't know if this thing moves in and out or if it is just stationary at one point. And I had a conversation with a gentleman on a live discussion a couple months back, and he was going, "It's a defense mechanism," and I was like, "It could be," and
Yeah.
we've had that conversation multiple times over the year. Is it over the years? I should say, is it a defense mechanism to what we're doing? We don't know, and until we can get more data that would actually suggest that, it's a really good theory, still at this point.
We were wondering earlier, right before you joined, we were talking about, the what seems to be a dome or a bubble of some sorts. We were wondering if there's actually multiple layers to it. Like what you're detecting is the main layer, but since there's odd things that happen outside of that, what if there's another region around that and then maybe another one around that, it can be
I,
concentric bubbles.
yeah, and you might see something coming up in the next couple episodes. That
You're
kind of
about
goes.
to say, stay tuned.
Yep, stay tuned.
Yeah, because
Like,
the phenomena is there's strange anomalous stuff reported all throughout the basin, so
yes.
it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Well, and then we you kind of see that idea with some of the rocket data from our big Kate system,
Right.
where we're hitting known altitudes like the 2,000 feet, where we're constantly seeing stuff. But then we actually saw data dropouts at other intervals,
Hmm.
and I think there's a couple more things coming out also that kind of go into that a little bit more also, that give us some supporting data on that possibly.
Interesting. That's fantastic.
But
Wow.
yeah, we had a lot of really good information this last, so and at this point, yeah, the bubble's real, you know. So
Right.
Whatever the hell it
lots
is, it's there. There's something there.
yeah, whatever the hell it is. Well, and then there was a really good question like, has there been like a physical reaction
Oh,
to it? Well, we've had multiple people videos on their cars go and do weird stuff or have a lot of interference, especially on the AM side.
mhm.
So we've had multiple people tell us that, and we've actually done a little bit like nothing that they filmed, but just like little experiments of like, yeah, holy shit, it did it, you know.
Interesting.
So yeah, it just adds more to the puzzle of whatever this is.
So there's an interesting point that I wanted to kind of wrap up with here. So if you remember a couple of years ago, your the buzzword that you were using regarding the ranch was validation, right?
Yeah.
And then this last year at Phenomicon, I think somebody asked Travis if he had a word to kind of describe everything, and he used the term breakthrough. And then uh, it's just interesting how this is all kind of building. And so I guess my question is, and it's a conversation Roger and I have had about a number of different things, and John as well, is manifestation. You know, this concept, and this is where we kind of get into the more esoteric aspect of things here, but um, the belief that if you believe so intently on something that you can actually manifest things to happen. We hear people talk about the power of positive thinking, and just all these great things. And I myself have witnessed what I would call manifestation, just in my own things that I've seen happen. I mean, Roger and I will put it on a personal level for you, Caleb. Here, there was when Roger and I first started this podcast, we said, boy, wouldn't it be really great if someday we had an opportunity to meet these guys and shake their hand and tell them how awesome we think the work that they're doing out there is. And then literally within 6 months of that is the first Phenomicon. And Roger and I had a chance to meet you guys. And then just little things like that Roger and I have never told anybody about. And then a great example will be last year, and John Nyberger knows all about this. So last year, they have this conference that takes place every spring down in Alabama called the SCU conference. And last year, John went down to attend, and I was unable to go for a number of reasons. And John said that while he was visiting with the Strattons, Travis and Micah Hanks got together and jammed on some music. And John said, "Boy, wouldn't it be great if we could, get Travis and Jay to jam at Phenomicon for the Insiders and do something like that?" And then before you know it, John is basically drafted into the band as the bass player. And I said to John, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, boy, how awesome would it be if you guys could, play at Phenomicon? And then I get voluntold that I'm going to be the keyboard player. And so all these little things that we talk about, how cool would it be if we could do this? And there's so many little call them synchronicities or whatever it is, where we want so badly to be able to have a greater understanding of something and to be able to experience something that I believe, as crazy as this is, and folks, don't ask me to explain it because I don't have an explanation for it, but this term of manifestation, where you so desperately want to be able to make something happen and to experience something that it happens. I mean, that's, I never thought in the world I'd ever get to meet Jay Stratton, and here I am, not only friends with him, but I play in the band with him, and we're friends with you, and we know you, and we've gotten to meet Travis, and just all these little things.
Jim eating guacamole and enjoyed it.
Okay, we're gonna stop right there. I can neither confirm or deny the cut. Yeah, okay, I did it, but let's just kind of shift gears and talk just a quick second about manifestation. Kaleb, what are your thoughts on that? Have you ever experienced anything like that in your life, where again, whether it's through just this positive power of positive thinking, and just what do you think?
Well, a couple different levels, and yeah, it's absolutely real. I believe, and again, I feel I've had the proof in my own life too. And I'm one that I feel it's a conversation that we need to have more of, because I believe it's something that many people have known about and do know about, and that's like the secret sauce, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of religious scripture and things like that. I'm one that I'm right there with you. I do have done a lot with personal development, if you will, in that realm, and I've invested quite heavily this last year in doing that very thing. So I went to a lot of Tony Robbins stuff this year, and there's a reason why Tony Robbins is where he's at, because he understands these things at a very deep level, and there's people around him that have taught him, and he's turned around and taught that all believe it also, in my opinion. And it's something, you go read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, the original, and a lot of different books like that. There's a lot of great teachers that teach this very thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that gets in the way of it is people's own thoughts and our own emotions.
Right.
And I'll give you a couple different examples. So one, we've had this very conversation on the ranch because of the results that we're seeing now, based on things that we did from years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, we did an experiment, and I won't go too much into it, but it was a remote viewing experiment. And we brought a very well-known individual who does remote viewing, and actually was in the military for that very thing and ran the program for years. And he came out, and we did a remote viewing exercise the way he trained us to do it. And he went back and had like the top 10 of his people do it. And they came back with results that 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when they did this, we were looking at it, oh, this doesn't mean anything. This isn't whatever. Well, this last year, we had things happen, and our one producer, whose just mind is so tuned to this process and this show, one of our main guys who's been helping drive this for years, went back through those notes because it sparked some of our results, sparked memories, or so he went back to the remote viewing stuff and went, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And brought that to us this year and was like, hey, you remember when we did this and they wrote this? And we started connecting a bunch of dots with a bunch of the data that we were finding. And I don't want to jump the gun on and say what those are for sure, because I was still reeling, if you will, trying to take it all in. But that would be a conversation with Eric and Travis. I think that, if we could get them on that wavelength again and start thinking about it, I know we could show you what those were.
Right.
But I know some of them had to deal with the bubble itself and
Mm-hmm.
some things that happened at Homestead too that we did this last year. And so it was just very so that conversation that we were having with that going, did we create this?
Right.
Or because of the way time actually works, is there's, are we reacting at some weird unconscious, subconscious level to things that have happened and what are happening? And, like it's that weird thing that you start
Yeah.
getting into this. Um, but that was just one example of like the manifestation potential with the ranch itself.
Yeah.
And then myself, I've had things since I've learned these tools almost 12, 13 years ago that I started, not just me, but my wife and I, we started doing tools, and a lot of things you have to work on yourself more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And the two ways that you're able to um, measure where you're at is your health and your wealth, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can track your weight, you can track how healthy you are, and you can track your checkbook. And there are a lot of very successful people who say you will never get to where you want to be on a financial goal until you are where you're at, until you fix your health side.
Right.
Because your body is kind of the reflection of that energy.
Right.
Because financial wealth or abundance, money, currency, it's a current of energy that you
Mm-hmm.
learn to control.
Right. Well,
And that
I tend to believe that there are no coincidences. And I just look back to that moment when we first connected, Caleb, when we were at that second year of Phenomicon, and Roger and I were attending that breakfast with you guys. And if it hadn't been for Roger, who had that Warcraft notebook with the Horde, I mean, that's kind of what kicked off our friendship. And I look at where Roger and I are from that moment to where we are right now. And if you had told me back then that, I would be in a situation where I'm working closely in a music project with both Travis Taylor and Jay Stratton and Micah Hanks, and I mean, I don't, I would have never believed it. But at the same time, it was something that I can't lie about. It's something that I dreamed about. Like, how cool would it be to get to, play music with Travis Taylor, or to get to know Jay Stratton? And it's you and I and Roger, we share the same faith, Caleb, and it all kind of dovetails into what we generally believe with our particular faith that we belong to. And what it's done for me is it's actually drawn me closer to that faith in a lot of ways. And it's just really confirmation, not just validation, but confirmation, if you will, of a lot of those things that I was raised to believe in. But I'm just blown away at that. I'm forgive me for not articulating this well, but just for some reason I felt the need to mention that word of manifestation, because it seems to be something that not just me but Roger has talked about, and John, you and I have had conversations about manifestations. Like, John and I are constantly asking ourselves, how did we get here? How did we, as we're sitting there in Alabama, watching Jimm eat guacamole with Jay and Jay
I,
Stratton and all these guys, and it's like, how did we get here? And it's like, uh, I was talking one evening with my wife about that, and she was the one that brought it up. And she said, manifestation, Jimm. It's manifestation, and it's like when you talk about people like Tony Robbins, when they talk about how they approach life, you can actually see that these are people that are manifesting. And in my case, I came from an environment where I was bullied relentlessly when I was a kid. and I had a father that struggled with alcoholism for a long time, and those left me with very, to this day, I still struggle with things like self-esteem, and my worst enemy is me when it comes to whenever I'm trying to accomplish something. My worst enemy is always Jim Kelgar. It's not this person, that person, or that person, or this situation. It's almost always me, and it brings me back to this famous saying that whether you think you can or you can't, you're absolutely right. And
Yeah,
so that
we
that power, that manifestation, I think is something. It's something that we all have. I think it's a latent energy, power, whatever you want to call it, faith. I think it's something that we all have the ability to tap into, and some people, I think, I think some people are just naturally attuned to it more so than others. But that's the one thing that I'm trying to figure out with my journey and my association with with the ranch. And this is, because I feel like there's a connection there. And Roger and I and John, we've talked about that as well, that we feel like there's some kind of a connection there, even though we don't work at the ranch, we aren't there all the time. There just seems to be something that seems to magnify some of these things, if that makes any sense.
oh yeah.
And you start to feel a connection with all the people that we meet, you know, throughout. Well, and I was going to say, all of my weirdness started with this damn baseball. It's a Rocket City Trash Pandas baseball that I had Jay and Travis sign 2 years ago. So that's when I met Jay and Travis, was having them autograph this baseball. And ever since then, crap's gotten real weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love it because this is the stuff that I actually hope to do more myself on being able to help other people. You
Mhm.
know, it's something because I've seen the results in my own life. Again, one of the examples I use is one of the most powerful tools I learned is you write your own story.
Yeah.
You know, and it's you literally sit down and just write on a piece of paper, my name is so and so, and my story goes like this. And then in that first paragraph, I learned you put something so crazy that all you can do if it happens is laugh. And then and then after that, you can write your story. How do you want your life to go? And Jim, you're absolutely right. We are the authors of everything in our life. And there are the people that hate that because they can't do any wrong.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, whether it's good or bad, we are the ones who made the decisions and we're the ones who get to deal with the consequences again if they're good or bad.
Right.
And so I remember I wrote a story in August of, or sorry, New Year's 2018, and it was when I really took that tool seriously. And was like, all right, I need to sit down and I'm going to do this. And then there were a bunch of other tools that I learned that I did with it and have since kind of evolved and gotten better information because went to better teachers.
Right.
Not to say that the teachers I went to before were bad. It's that evolution. You just keep finding that next step of that person who gets you to that next level.
Right.
And so, but my story essentially, because I was just like a lot of people out there, I'm a big fan of Star Wars or Warhammer and fantasy stuff.
Mhm.
And I put in my story in that first paragraph, act in a Star Wars movie. Because if that ever happened, all you can do in that situation is laugh, right?
Yeah.
But then 10 months later, we're out there filming the pilot for the Skinwalker television show.
That's
That
awesome.
wasn't even in the wheelhouse, right?
Right. Mhm.
I had and so I was sitting out there and all I could do was laugh because I was like, holy crap, like this is going to be potentially be an actual television show. Is it Star Wars? No, but we're dealing with aliens, maybe. We're dealing with unseen forces that are messing with things that physically,
Mhm.
right?
It
We're
might be
dealing
Star
with
Wars.
Star Wars stuff, right?
It might be. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a prequel.
You will
Kind
never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
of, and on Skinwalker Ranch, yes. But yeah, but we're dealing with lasers, we're shooting lasers all the time. We're shooting rockets, we're doing all sorts of cool stuff. And and so it's like, and there's other things in that story that have happened too. Yes, that I and it's and the cool part is you can come back to it every year and update it. You know,
Yeah.
and so so manifestation is very much a real thing, and yes, it is tied directly to the teachings of that. I'll just say it. Christianity teaches. Actual
Mhm.
Christianity teaches this stuff, but
Yeah.
they say it in a way that you have to start asking the right questions.
Yeah. Well, I just look at, all these examples where you get a large congregation of people in a particular denomination, whether it's our own or some other,
Hmm.
and you get them all focused and praying and fasting to, influence an outcome on something. And how many times do we hear, these faith promoting stories where they end up getting the desired result? I could not tell you the number of times where in my congregation here, now obviously in Utah we deal with drought relatively often because it's a very dry climate. But there's been times in the past where the leaders of our church have asked us to pray and fast for rainfall,
Hmm.
and lo and behold, it rains. It happens. Now, a scientist or an atheist can scoff at that and say, "Oh, well, that was, that was bound to happen sooner or later." Okay, okay, great, that's fine. If that's what helps you to rationalize it, nothing wrong with that. But for those of us that are engaged in, trying to manifest something into happening, that just seems to unlock something that makes you feel like, okay, there really is something else out there, perhaps a collective consciousness of some kind, of power of consciousness. And that's another rabbit hole maybe for another day. But I've always felt that consciousness, which I guess is where all this ties in with manifestation and whatnot, is that consciousness, that energy that every living thing has, whether you call it a life force, your spirit, your soul, your entity, your energy, or whatever. It's real. It's very real, and it lives beyond our physical state. And I firmly believe that. And I feel that that's kind of been my buzzword for this year is manifestation. Along with validation and breakthrough. And now I'm one of these people that's the rabbit hole that I've been going down. And Roger's been coming with me on that. And Roger, chime in anytime, buddy, because I'm talking way too much.
You're good.
So
But hey, consciousness ties back into the ranch, maybe though. You've got electromagnetic effects, time, other weird stuff like the cryptid kind of stuff, but there seems to be this other element there that there's like maybe related to consciousness. I mean, you're kind of getting a grab bag of a bunch of different weird stuff.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
and yeah, and that's again, that's been a conversation between the team multiple times. Is some of the stuff we're seeing, is it because in a way we created it, in a way because a lot of times we'll have something happen during an experiment. We get these crazy results that we weren't expecting. Um, and that sends us down a whole nother rabbit hole, and then we start talking what ifs. And sometimes that what if happens, and this is something that really did get us going last year a little bit, is some of this happened within a couple days where we went
Wow.
what if, and then within a couple days we had a crazy result in an experiment, and then we went, well, no, wait, hold up.
Hmm.
And then other times again, like with that remote viewing thing, it was years, and that we went, oh, wait a minute, and we had to go back, check the notes, and we went, yeah, holy shit, it's right there.
Hmm.
And yeah, John, you're hitting it right on the head with, the consciousness side of it is nuts. And yeah, that's where there's some things with the ranch that's very, very powerful, I think.
Yeah.
And that's again where, like I said, I've updated my story multiple times, and there's things that since then, since the big holy moly one happened, other things have happened, and I actually got in those stories because those are the two options is that, and I think that's why the first time you do it, you put something in there that again all you can do is laugh, because when it happens, your two paths are, yeah, this is real, this works, and you go down the faith path, or you keep going down the same old path that you have been and ignore it.
Right.
And then in 10 years you're sitting there going, you're just more bitter and you're more, oh well, and you make excuses up, and you don't let yourself be led by the data, like Eric says.
Yeah, absolutely. Man,
Well, you made a good point. How do you, if there is a consciousness component and you're doing experiments, but your own thoughts and discussions and actions are affecting the experiment because something is reacting to that, how does that affect your experiments?
Exactly.
How do you design an experiment that you shouldn't be affecting, but you actually are because it's playing with you? Like
Well,
the
welcome to the conversation we have every week.
like
well,
the 1.2 gigahertz stuff. Like
well,
you guys have never detected that.
and not just
You
that.
send it out, all of a
Let,
sudden it starts playing it back to you.
let's go
Yes.
back to a couple years ago when we did the focus group with the insiders, the number 33, right?
Yep.
That's another instance where we had something that, for all wants and purposes, seemed to be an instance of manifestation, right?
Yep. And John, you hit it right on the head. That was I want to say the 1.2 was one of those things that we went, within a day, within days, because there was a whole discussion. Well, what frequency should we try and look at that nothing should be there? And that's where, and again, you guys know this, Eric chose the 1.2. And yep, John, you hit it right on the head. What came up that first day, and it just went from there.
Yep.
The 1.2. That's just one of the many examples of that very thing happening.
It kind of makes me wonder if there's something there that is so different from us that it's trying to communicate, but it literally does not know how because it's only seeing part of us and we're only seeing part of it. So it's like, well, they sent this signal at me. I'm going to send it back to them.
Yeah.
It's just some way to communicate. It doesn't know what else to do. You
Yeah,
know, it's weird.
it's the
I
very thing of the 1.6. I want to say it was season 2, and we were out there in the field out by Homestead 2, and that 1.6 just came out of nowhere. And for whatever, and because I know that there's things in that area now that are of interest to different groups, and that's why Travis was like, "Wait a minute, this is interesting because it shouldn't. There's only certain things that should be there. So what is this? And that's still a question. What is it?"
And
Yeah.
that led him to meet Jay
Yes.
eventually, which is another, there
Yep.
are no coincidences
No
type of
coincidences, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and
No.
that's the thing is we've had some very cool conversations with some high players in certain government areas that are interested in what's going on because of the national security issues and things. And so we know people are watching, we know people are paying attention because the data we're getting is real.
Hmm.
And kind of goes back to what Roger and Jim and you guys have talked about is people who are stuck in like the cultural norm now, if you will, of that want fast results and even faster gratification. They're not paying attention to what we're doing.
Right.
The people who are paying attention, that they know, and we have those conversations with players all the time. So
It's the long game. That's the best way I can describe it. Is what we're dealing with here is the long game. It's not something that's going to just reveal itself and resolve itself over the course of some predetermined timeline. And I'm convinced of that. I've watched it all play out here for the last 6 seasons, and I'm just excited to see where it goes. And I'm grateful to be along for the ride as a spectator because I think that the work you guys are doing out there has greater ramifications than most people realize. And I think if people would just stop and take into consideration the what ifs, what if this really is what some of this speculation tells us that it could be. I mean, we're talking game changing stuff. And I'm not even talking about the UAP aspect. I'm just talking about simply like we're talking about the capabilities of, the human mind and consciousness, because, and this is where I always get made fun of, but I think that someday we may find out that consciousness is the predominant life form in the universe, if there is such a thing, once we figure out what consciousness is, because I think that it's part of that, it's part, it is who we are. Our consciousness is who we are. I think we had stuff that we brought with us when we were born into this world, and I don't think that when we die a physical death, I don't think that's the end. I think we continue to carry on, and that would be what I call consciousness. And so that's why I think that consciousness is far more ubiquitous than a lot of people give it credit for being. And that's coming from a guy that truly doesn't understand what he's saying. So I just, it's just one of those feelings that I have, that it's if there is any answers to be found, I think that consciousness and being able to better understand what our own consciousness is and what just as a whole, I think that there's a lot to be learned. And just like Eric says, I that's what really draws me into the show, is I want to learn. And I'm so and encouraged by just watching the fact that that's what I see out of every single one of you on the ranch as well. That you all have that eager desire to learn and to understand, have a deeper and better understanding. And it's something that, watching this show, not just by the way of being introduced to the insider community, but just it's made my life much more happy and fulfilling, being able to connect with people that just really have such curious minds and want to better understand the mysteries that are happening around us. And it's made my life better. I've had so much fun getting to know all the great insiders and all of you guys that are here. It's just I'm in this for the long haul, and I'm just, like I said, I'm grateful that I get to be a spectator watching it all happen. And I think it's exciting to see where this investigation continues to go.
Yeah, so am I.
I'm looking forward to season 20. We still don't know what's going on, and nobody has any hair left.
Oh man, Eric and
We're all
Travis.
bald.
Yeah. Oh gosh, 20. If we're season 20, I'll
Still be younger than me. I don't have any hair either now.
All
Yeah,
righty. Well, closing thoughts and remarks. Roger, we'll start with you, buddy.
Yeah, no, a great episode. Thank you again, Kaleb, for jumping on and talking to us about Skinwalker Ranch and sharing your personal perspectives. I think the discussions that we've had and just our own personal insights and the connections that we've made and feel truly is a humbling experience. And again, I'm appreciative of all you guys and for taking the time to have what I think is an important discussion around things that we as humans don't understand. And very, very grateful that we get to see the episodes of Skinwalker Ranch and that Brandon is making this as transparent as possible. And it's a lot of fun. And I can't wait to catch up more again with you, Kaleb. Phenomecon's coming up here soon and whatnot. But overall, thank you again, and really appreciate the discussion today.
Right on. John, how about you?
I echo
Closing
the
thoughts
same
and
thing,
remarks.
Caleb. Yeah, you hear this a lot, but we really do value and appreciate you guys, just as people and as what you do on the show. But you know, you need to hear that more often. We really appreciate all your time and all the stuff you guys put up with to get this information out. Like it's hard. It's a hard life you guys lead sometimes, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and
well,
I'll go ahead, Caleb.
oh, well, thanks guys. This only goes so far as a support, really. And so we appreciate all the fans and everybody who's supporting us in the journey. I can tell you that we don't take it lightly. We still talk about when we go to Phenomicon, and I'm sure you guys remember Kirby, and
Mhm.
these different people who travel and spend that amount of money to come just to come for a couple days and learn more about what we're doing and stuff. So we don't take it lightly, and we really do appreciate it. And And I'm sorry I was so late. I'm sure Roger can tell you the text. I was like, oh shit. So uh, I completely
It's all good.
I completely spaced it, and I just happened to look at my phone when I did, and was like, "Oh no!" I just had that sinking feeling in my gut. I was like, "Crap!" So I got to jump on with you guys and make up for it another time. So,
No,
and I always appreciate coming on and talking with you guys. So,
It worked out. It worked out great.
right on. No complaints whatsoever. And yes, thank you so much for joining us today, Caleb, and sharing your time and your insights with us. Always one of our favorite guests to have on the Soul of the Unexplained. And again, we have Phenomicon coming up in less than 2 months now, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you there. And just keep on keeping on. And thanks for the wonderful example that you guys set, and again for the dedication that you and the team members there at the ranch have to figuring out some of these mysteries. It's really been a pleasure and an honor to be able to watch the series grow in the way that it has. And um, as Roger and John said, hats off to Brandon and everybody in the organization that makes this happen, including the guys at Prometheus that film it. It's just we're just grateful to be passengers along on the ride. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights with us. And we wish you the very best, and wish all the best for your family as well, and hope they're doing well. And can't wait to see you coming up in Phenomicon. Looking forward to that. And so with that, folks, if you like what you saw and heard today, then hit that subscribe button down there somewhere and give us a thumbs up if you liked it. And tell us your thoughts. What are your thoughts on things like manifestation and all the great things that we've seen thus far, as we're 5 seasons deep into season 6 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. But with that, folks, again, thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next time right here on The Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.